All right, Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise, glory, and honor that's due to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachah, B'dash, double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule well, peace and blessing to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect. Shalom, Barakathum. And I want to speak about the escalation ladder. All right, I put this into the chat, the chat GPT, the AI, because there are stages to war. Just to outline this a little bit, this is based on a video I saw. This is Sabby Sabs. She does political commentary, but you'll see in the video she's speaking about something that you don't see a lot of people, even in MAGA, talking about with this trade war, because that's exactly what we have right now, is a trade war. And that is China is turning off supplies. Okay, in another video, Lord's will, I can get a detailed list of all of the key elements and minerals and things of that nature that only come out of China, okay, that prop up the Western hegemony. And you'll see very quickly why what Trump is doing is foolish, unless this is not their final aim. They have a further plan, which is, I believe, is the case. But let's play a little bit of it, and I'll go into the escalation ladder.
You guys know we've been talking about the tariffs for quite some time. And China is one of those countries that has decided to respond to us in an epic way by slapping a 34% tariff as a retaliation against the United States government. You really can't get mad at them. I mean, what do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to do? So there's that response. But then there's something else that China did that I think a lot of people don't know about. And Eric sent me this story. This has kind of gone under the radar. Let's start with that retaliation first. Let's go ahead and get into that here.
Is China coming to the table or not?
Well, which table are you talking about? If they're coming into the ring to fight and take off the gloves and fight back, yes, they're going to be doing that. China has been fairly measured so far, and Xi Jinping essentially telling his government to remain calm until now. I think they had probably taken a little bit too many punches themselves, and finally 34% that takes effect on all U.S. goods imported into China on April 10th. So mid this week, there are a number of different export controls. They've added some defense companies to their so-called blacklist, the entity list. They are banning chicken imports from some American companies, sorghum from one American companies. Also, again, those rare earths, further restrictions on the outflow of rare earths, which China controls a large swath of them for the tech supply chain.
You got to remember, he said chicken. Now, you might think that that's not a big deal, but what's baked into a lot of these prices, like right now, I'm eating a lot of chicken thighs and broccoli, just getting my fitness back together, and that's one of the cheapest things that, I see that you can buy for the amount of protein. What's going to happen when China starts, putting tariffs and things on it, responding? Because, look, they're not just sweeping tariffs going tit for tat. China knows the points of the economy that are weak, that's going to cause the most pain, that's going to give the most exposure. They already have a profile of what we buy from them, okay? This is not just going to be a sweeping tariff. This is a war, You don't just shoot arrows in a war just to shoot arrows. No, you try to find the most strategic point where you shoot the arrows. It matters where you aim at, And so this is what people don't get, they don't realize. And China already has this mapped out. They've been farming America since, the 90s, okay?
Danny was just talking about Apple. That is a good example of how these Trump tariffs do affect American companies who, after their first trade war with China, diversified to the so-called China Plus One strategy, Apple in particular, making iPhones and Macs and other products in India, in Thailand, in Indonesia, Vietnam, and of course Taiwan, a huge part of the tech supply chain, all of them getting sizable tariffs from the Trump administration. So it's going to be a balancing act, obviously, for China as it tries to rebalance its economy, to boost domestic consumption, to take up its excess industrial overcapacity. You have to watch what the markets are going to do today, because the markets here in Hong Kong and in China onshore were on holiday on Friday. They didn't take the brunt like the U.S. markets did on Friday. And also you have to watch the yuan. The onshore yuan, the currency, essentially weakening to its lowest level since February. And that is one concern, that they could potentially, and they haven't so far, they've kept the yuan stable, they could potentially weaponize the yuan and weaken the yuan further.
Is China...
Okay, so China, guys, again, responding to the United States tariffs, 34%. And we do receive a lot of goods from China. This is what I was warning people about earlier on. That will impact us. Now, Donald Trump has responded and has decided to increase the tariffs towards China by 50%. I'm not kidding. When we talk about trade war, this is definitely a trade war. Check this out.
More now on the president's threat against China to impose an extra 50% tariff on goods imported into.
And when she says trade war, okay, I typed in, are there escalations into the ChatGPT? Are there escalations or stages that preclude war, such as trade? It says, yes, there are several stages or escalations that typically precede war, often referred to as part of the conflict escalation ladder. So there's a conflict escalation ladder, and all military minds and generals, people that study war and conflict, they all know about this, okay? So they know where this is going, where this is headed, and where we have the scriptures, we have the truth, you know, so we know how this is going to end. But we're giving you, you know, the play-by-play, because that's our job, is to watch and to warn. All right. But it says, the first one, it says diplomatic protests. OK, this is the first part of the escalation ladder. Official complaints, summoning ambassadors, or issuing condemnations. All right. And Trump basically been doing that before he even got in office. He been talking shit, man, you know, about how China is unfair and they're robbing us and all of this. And then, you know, and now he stood on it, you know. But number 2, I'll get a precept in a second here. Salakia. Number 2, propaganda and rhetoric. It says media campaigns or speeches aimed at shaping public opinion or signaling intentions. And then we all know the CIA, or that's their job. That's what they do. They basically, what everybody believes is basically designed and curated by the CIA. This is why most people walk around, they don't know nothing, okay? Or they just believe what they see on TV, because the CIA knows, they've cracked the psychology. They figured out the psyche of people, and they've programmed you, okay? Through media, through social media, definitely now. And you know, that's why they call the CIA the Central Intelligence Agency. They control the intelligence, okay? They control what people think, what people know, how people perceive things, okay? Alan Dulles, back in the early 50s or 60s, he created the term conspiracy theory, and that was on purpose to demonize people that got a little bit too close and started asking too many questions. It's like, well, what are you, some kind of conspiracy theory? That's what it came from. Alan Dulles was one of the early directors of the CIA, okay? He came up with that, and so they control that, okay? Number 3, though, it says economic measures, sanctions, trade restrictions, asset freezes, tariffs, and embargoes, okay? Currency manipulation or restrictions, and that's what the U.S. dollar is a currency manipulation, all right? These are meant to pressure without direct violence, okay? So you got tariffs, all right? And in a second, we're gonna see China's going towards the route of an embargo. Okay, and an embargo means the trade is just blocked off, and if China does that, the American economy is through. Okay, number 4, it says cyber operations. So after this trade war, you're gonna start seeing cyber attacks. Okay, if this escalates, okay, then it's gonna get bad. Okay, then it's gonna be military posturing. Okay, then proxy conflicts. Okay. Right now, who's a proxy of China? Taiwan is a proxy of China. Okay, who's a proxy of Russia? Iran is a proxy of them. Okay, so all of these proxies that we already have Number two, propaganda and rhetoric towards, we gotta hate Iran. If you don't hate Iran, they're gonna look at you like you're a T word. Okay, if you don't hate China, all right, they're gonna look at you as a traitor, you know. And then 7 and 8, limited military actions, and then it says number 8, full-scale war. Okay, so that's the escalation ladder. That's where we're headed. Okay, and we know this in Joel the 3rd chapter. Okay, verse 9, it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, that all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And Trump is just boasting yesterday about how he rebuilt the military, about he was talking about how Doge is going to cut military spending, and now he's saying, no, actually we approved the biggest budget ever. We're just going to give them $1 trillion, and we're going to rebuild the military, and it's going to be beautiful. And he's talking about all of this. So he completely changed his mind on that, man, you know. And this is them getting ready, all right? Because we all know how this is gonna end, man. You can't play with people's money and think you're not gonna get hands put on you eventually, okay? Verse 10, beat your plowshare into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And plowshare and pruning hooks are non-warlike manufacturing and products, okay? That represents peace, times of peace. But those factories that China has, they're going to be able to crank out a lot of military equipment, man. I'm going to play the rest of the video. You'll see what we're talking about and how this is going to get bad, okay? Verse 11, though, it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord Jehovah. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. All right, so all of the heathen, the spirit is going to be on them to come into a particular place, all right, which is going to be the so-called Middle East, and do battle. Okay, that's what's going to go down. Okay, you're going to have to fight this out, you know, and we can't wait, because that at that point we know the Lord is here, man, you know. But playing a little bit more
into the U.S. if Beijing doesn't withdraw its 34% counter tariff. NBC's Janice Mackey-Freyer is in Beijing for us and has the latest on how China is reacting. Janice?
China responded to President Trump's threat of additional tariffs with defiance and its own threat of countermeasures to fight a trade war with the U.S. to the end. If President Trump goes through with what he has vowed, this additional 50% tariffs on all Chinese goods going into the U.S., that's 104% on anything consumers buy from China. Clothing.
104% on any goods that we buy that are from China. And Brenda, I believe, already said it in the chat, and that's the first thing I thought about too. Temu won't be cheap anymore. No. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of us like T.
And T, you're not realizing that there's a different composition of the population. Not only do they have 3 or 4 times the amount of people there, but their people are way more in order. These people over here in America, they're addicted to Temu and other cheap things that come straight out of China. And they don't even have the money for it. They're financing everything. They're doing buy now, pay later. Okay, so when y'all are having these trade wars, which population is gonna cause the most turmoil? Okay, the American population is. Okay, they're gonna bug out, man. Okay, you think this is getting bad because they're financing Taco Bell, but wait until this trade war turns up. Okay, you know, when China back in 2020 said take your ass inside, guess what happened? All 1 billion of them took their ass inside, because they don't play that, man. Okay, see, in China, they don't have a constitution where they gotta ask a company to please do this and please do that, where they gotta get the president does one thing and then they gotta hope that Congress passes the law. No, when the president of China and the rest of them oligarchs, they get together and say something, it happens. When they say stop doing that, this company, stop trading, raise the tariffs to this, that's what happens. They're faster and organized, okay? Because they're closer to a monarchy than America is in this slow, bureaucratic, democratic system, okay? So you can't move as fast as China can when it comes to reacting. And the composition of your population, you know, it's not the same. A lot more of them are poor. They're not they're not laid up as comfortable as Americans are. They're in better shape, okay? They're better at saving money, okay? And they listen to their government more because the government don't give them any room to, okay? But here stateside, you're gonna have to deal with niggas, man. That alone is gonna be a plague that you all gonna have to deal with. And you're gonna have to end up deploying the National Guard internally and the military outside, okay? Is China gonna have that problem? No, they're not, okay?
Because Temu is very cheap. But no, it won't be. I'm also thinking about electronics. I'm thinking about people that work in certain industries where they do have to purchase electronics, whether it's certain computers, whether it's iPhones, iPads, like those types of things. You know, where are they made? And I think this could be really dangerous. Now, obviously, none of us want to have to pay that. None of us want to have to do that. And I think what Trump may be trying to do is to say, okay, I'm just going to fight back against you with this, kapow, you know? But this isn't Street Fighter, and this isn't Mortal Kombat. And the rest of us live in the real world, and we can't afford those things. And I'm saying right now, and I'm telling you guys, all of you that got an iPhone, what happens if you break your screen? And not to pick on you, it's just that my friends that have iPhones, they tell me they're the ones that crack their screens. I've never had a screen crack for my Samsung. Never. I've never had an Android screen crack. So I want you to think about these things. Like, this is insane. And it's not a joke. And I feel like Donald Trump, he's just playing a joke, like with our lives. Oh, the American people, you guys can take this hit for a little bit while we just have this little trade war. No, someone like him can take that hit. As Max Blumenthal also mentioned, this is impacting billionaires too, right? Mm-hmm. Trump don't really care, but billionaires like...
And this is going to cause economic tension even more so, because people already can't afford their houses. They can't afford their car notes, all right? I mean, if gas prices were to go up, you know, you're very close to all hell breaking loose, okay? People can't even get to work. People just going to crash out. They're going to be like, you know, F it, you know? And we're very, very close to that. People don't realize how close we are to this, man. You're at ease, man, you know?
Bill Ackman is speaking out against it. He's like, wait a minute, now this is starting to impact me. Let's go on a little bit more.
Shoes, car parts, toys, tech, household goods, the list goes on. China is very clear in saying it will not back down from imposing countermeasures to what officials here call U.S. blackmail. They see negotiation as legitimizing President Trump's trade blitz that is hitting manufacturing hubs right across Asia. Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, South Korea, they're all signaling they want to negotiate with the U.S., though talks, it seems, are no guarantee of getting tariff relief. Here, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed there are no talks at any level between the U.S. and China over trade, saying, quote, the U.S. lacks a genuine willingness to engage in serious dialogue. Now, before the markets opened here today, the government unleashed a series of measures to help stabilize the stock market, including share buybacks by several state-owned companies. They're known here as China's national team, and that helped the markets close higher. The deadlines, though, are piling on now. All these back-to-back tariffs are set to take effect over the next 48 hours and threaten to disrupt trade, supply chains, and ultimately raise prices for U.S. consumers down the road. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News, Beijing.
So think about that there just for a second, right? So again, depending on what type of industry that you work in, that could be a problem. And I want to bring up manufacturing here for just a second. I know one of the things that people want is for manufacturing to grow again in the United States. People are like, bring manufacturing back.
It's not coming back, okay? It's not coming back. You've been printing money. You at the same time you got rid of 90,000 almost 100,000 factories have gone since the 90s, man. Okay, 7 million jobs, manufacturing jobs, gone. Okay, and that was from back then. That doesn't include what it would be if you had kept all of those factories and manufacturing companies. It'd be many times 7 million jobs that you currently have right now. Okay, and The reason they're not coming back is because you sold them. China's not going to give it back to you. And you've been printing money, inflating everything. So now you can't afford it anymore, man. It costs too much to pay people now because of inflation. All of that cost, it's baked in because it's really a debt that Esau is offloaded onto you, and he's paid himself. Okay, these top elites, Bill Gates, they got connections overseas in China to be able to get real assets and stuff. The average person doesn't. How do they get that? Because by the US dollar, okay, printing it and inflating it, all right, and they saddle it with you through productivity. Okay, this is why you look at the productivity curve, it's going up and up and up, and wages are just going flat. Okay, they've been siphoning that money, that wealth out of you, that purchasing power out of you, man. You know, and when you look at their portfolio or your portfolio, you got negative net worth. Okay, you don't even have a savings, and they got everything. Okay, you know, and the markets are rigged for those assets to make money just by sitting there. So Esau can just make money off of interest just because how the laws are written, how the financial system is set up. He's just sitting there, he'll make money. Okay. Meanwhile, you got to work a double, you know, just so you can make rent.
First of all, it should have never left in the first damn place. Had it not been for things like NAFTA, we probably wouldn't be in this situation. Let's just keep it real. But what I do want you to understand, when I said that oftentimes even American businesses or mom and pop businesses, the products that they make may be made here in the US, but the materials come from other countries like China or like Mexico.
That's a good point, because when you look at even American car manufacturers, you know, like you got GM, you got Ford, what they don't tell you is these American car companies, they are assembled here. Okay, that means they still got to get the parts and the certain raw materials from overseas. Okay, it may be an American company, but it's not. They may not be making the cars over there in the overseas. Okay, but they still hold all the raw materials there. Okay, because in America it's just assembled. The parts come here, and then you pay men over here stateside, and they assemble it here in these factories here. Okay, but China and Taiwan and Indonesia and India and Vietnam, okay, they control a lot of those raw materials. Hardly any steel is getting made in manufacturing here, man. The Rust Belt is through. Okay, you know, Pennsylvania used to be crank out a lot of iron and steel, man. Not anymore. Okay, so this is about to get bad, man. And what is going to be the solution? All right, let me get this in Obadiah 1. Just Obadiah verse 7, verse 6. It says, "How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee." Okay, and this is what we see playing out right now. Okay, these trade agreements that you thought you had, NAFTA back in the 90s, that destroyed everything, man. Okay, somebody made a good point. They said there's no such thing as a global free trade. You know, yeah, you may be able to transact, but it's never going to be just an open global free trade, because every country is gonna act in its own best interest. You know, they're not just gonna give you. There's not just gonna be a fair trade. China's gonna cheat, man. Okay, if you got certain technology, China's gonna figure it out, man. They're not just gonna buy it from you if they can figure out a way to make it themselves cheaper. So it ain't gonna be no, okay, well, we make this and you make that. No, man, you're all competing against each other. Okay, you know, and if China figures out a way to make the shortcuts, guess what? They're gonna do it. Okay, and they have no qualms about doing it, because America is is cheating and taking shortcuts by throwing their weight around with the US dollar. Okay, but it says, "The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is no understanding in him." And that wound is this giant manufacturing gaping hole this service economy, okay? All of the gains of the S&P 500 since 2009 have been all service jobs, okay? It's been DoorDash, it's been Starbucks, all right? It's been Silicon Valley software, okay? But you don't have any materials. You ain't been digging into to energy. You know, you haven't been tapping into minerals. Trump is just now talking about doing it, but guess what? That's gonna take years, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna take a lot of money to do it, okay? And it's gonna take years for you to get it stood up. And what is China gonna be doing? You think they're just gonna sit there and wait for you to, you know, throw the next punch? No, man. Okay, they're gonna hammer you. Okay, so that's a giant wound, man. Okay, you don't actually make anything here, and the elites don't actually care about money because they don't care about borders. They don't care about countries and sovereignty. Okay, that's why there's no gold in Fort Knox, because they don't give a damn about Americans having a currency backed by gold. They know you're addicted to just being able to buy things, comfort, convenience, okay, which is an effeminate state to be in. You just worrying about, you know, how you feel, and if you can just, you know, go to the next game or go to the beach during the summer, you know, just like in 2020. That's all you were worried about, okay? So they know this. So they taught you not to value gold and silver, okay? They taught you not to have real assets and invest, you know? So that's part of that wound, and China is about to get your ass. And don't forget, they're in league with Russia, okay? So if you think you want to go there militarily, well, guess what? They're ready, okay? So is Iran, all right? That's a dangerous triangle offense they got over there. China, Russia, and Iran. If they all come together, man, I mean, good luck, okay? And I don't believe in luck. Okay, verse 8, it says, shall I not in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh, even destroy the wise men out of Edom and understanding out of the mount of Esau? Yeah, because they're trying to just rip the Band-Aid off. That's unwise, man. You can't do that, okay? Because these guys are proud and have a chip on their shoulder. And ultimately, I believe the elites are fighting, and they have a larger plan that they want to play out, you know?
I'm not joking. And that leads me again to manufacturing. When you talk about
Chinese President Xi Jinping, while may not be elected in the democratic sense, may not be worried about his next re-election, is worried about his legitimacy and legacy. And Donald Trump has really put him in a corner. And just as you said, as your correspondent said, they're girding for a fight. And ultimately, a fight between the U.S. and China on these points will only result in higher prices for American consumers, precisely the effect that Donald Trump says he was elected to counteract.
Higher prices. Again, if there's one country to go to war with over trade, I would not choose China, since, again, a lot of things that we consume in the United States do come from China. I mean, I'm gonna keep it real. We ain't got it like that. When you compare us to China, we don't have the technology that they have. We just don't. We ain't got it like that.
And you don't have the ability to just make things. You know, the average person walking around in the mirror, they don't know nothing, man. They don't know east from west. Okay, you got a small group of people that know what they're doing in terms of technology, but it's very small. And you got something in America called STEM fields. Okay, that's not the majority of people. Most people, when they're going to college, they're learning some bullshit, man. They're coming out dumber than they when they went in. Very few people are going into medicine. Very few people are going into law. Very few people are going into engineering. Okay, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is STEM. It's not a lot, okay? And a lot of those people that going into STEM are not even from America, okay? They're from India, from somewhere else. You imported them, and so they have no allegiance here, you know? And so what is this? How is this gonna end? You know? China, however, they can be like, get your ass to work, okay? A lot of people in China live in abject poverty, man. You offer them a few yuan, you know, which is their currency over there. Hey, they're loving it, man. You know, they'll get to work. China can build and crank out a lot of different things, man. And they don't have a lot of bloated what do you call it? They don't have bloated profit margins, okay? Where you just got a lot of fat, unnecessary fat everywhere, okay? They're very efficient. And that's the reason why Esau goes over there to begin with, to produce a lot of products, because they are efficient. They can do it very, very cheaply, man, okay, and get the same result, okay? China sells iPhones identical to the real iPhone over there, and it's not Apple, okay? But they can still make them, you know, and it's at a fraction of the price.
And I just, that's not someone you want to pick a battle with. And instead of fighting against China, why aren't we trying to work with them? Why does everything have to be, let's fight against this country instead of working with them and building and growing together?
Well, Habakkuk 2 says, verse 4, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yet also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man. Neither keepeth at home. So he's proud. This is why, man. He can't help it, man. Okay, he just has to be the world police. He has to be the perceived as the so-called good guy, that image, okay? But really, he's the hammer of the earth. He's not a good guy, okay? He's the wicked. It says, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death and cannot be satisfied. This is why he's trying to tell Iran you can't have nuclear weapons, okay? This is why he's trying to tell who can use the Strait of Hormuz and who can't, okay? This is why he's trying to lock down the South China Sea, and he ain't nowhere near there. That's nowhere near America, man. You know how big the Pacific Ocean is, you know? So this guy, he don't need a reason to be wicked, okay? It says, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people, okay?
Because the U.S. government, they want to dominate the entire world. It's like the U.S. government wants to be the dominant power.
You said it.
And what I'm saying is that the days of that are going away. And you can see that with an organization like BRICS. You're seeing these countries are saying, we don't want a dominant power anymore. We want a multipolar world. And
that's why China is so bold. China knew this day was going to come. Okay, that's why BRICS is set up. And you can talk about the yuan is at an all-time low, and they're getting hammered and they're feeling pressure. But China can just be like, all right, well, we're switching to BRICS. You know, to hell with all the U.S. dollars and this debt that we're holding. You know, to hell with y'all, okay? And that could be the catalyst for them going to a hot war, okay? Or going up the escalation ladder, because it will go up the escalation ladder.
I think there's anything wrong with that. If you look at the Black Panthers in particular,
let me go over here, let me see.
You might actually be excited about. But make no mistake, this was a surgical strike. They didn't need to say no. They just need clean tech marbles to overpriced roofing tiles. Their mineral doesn't run. You're fighting the tariffs in particular, but not so much about this. Check this out. China calmly walked over to the supply chain and yanked out a handful of critical bolts. The bolts are made of dysprosium, terbium, tungsten, indium, and yttrium.
Those minerals, those elements are very necessary for magnets, very high-end tools. Dysprosium is what she's trying to say. Neodymium, yttrium, iridium. They have damn near a monopoly on those kind of minerals, man. Almost like 99% of it comes from China. Okay. Now they quietly walked over and say, stop selling it. This is what I mean by the agility of China. Okay, they're not just big, they have more control over it. Okay. It's like, just because you're a big guy and you can throw a really powerful punch, but if you don't have good technique, okay, you don't know how to, you don't know how to use torque and positioning to get the most out of it, then guess what? Somebody smaller than you can still knock you out. Okay. And then China's not only big, but it has more control. Okay, they just walked over to the supply chain and said, stop it. Don't sell that to them no more. And that's what it was. That was an order, okay?
elements that don't make headlines, but without which your electric car doesn't run. Your fighter jet doesn't fly. Your solar panels go from clean energy marvels to overpriced roofing tiles. They're minerals that show up on obscure government risk registers right before war starts, or clean tech projects get quietly canceled. So here we go again, another thing that minerals that we depend on China for. What China did wasn't a ban, at least not in name. They called it export licensing. Sounds like something a trade lawyer might actually be excited about. But make no mistake, this was a surgical strike. They didn't need to say no. They just needed to say maybe later, or the right set of paperwork. These licenses give Beijing control over not just where these materials go, but how fast they go, in what quantity, and to which politically convenient customers. So this is interesting, folks. It says here also about the materials. Let's get to this part. The materials China just restricted are not random. They're chosen with precision of someone who's read the U.S. product spec sheets and defense procurement orders. Start with dysprosium. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I'm sorry, guys.
Dysprosium.
Your electric motor needs to function at high temperatures, and they all do. Then mostly it is using neodymium magnets doped with dysprosium. No, dysprosium. I'm sorry, guys. Damn. No, dysprosium. No thermal stability.
Rare earth elements are hard to pronounce. But you know, I was gonna let her play it. I've been going on long enough. But you know, but tungsten, dysprosium, yttrium, neodymium, those are the rare earth elements. They almost exclusively come out of China. You need them for EV, which is electric vehicles. You need them for military fighter craft like F-35s, for tanks, for armor-piercing bullets. And so now you can quickly see how Obadiah 1:7 is coming to pass, okay? And how stupid this is, and how wisdom has perished out of this place, okay? And this will get worse, okay? This will escalate, okay? I read the steps of the escalation ladder, all right? And it's gonna get worse, okay? And what do you think is gonna happen when people, the other nations like Russia and China, like Russia and Iran, know that America's supply chain for their military is getting cut off? Okay, they're gonna be way more likely to try you, man. Okay, that's just how it goes, you know. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep watch. You know, this thing is heating up, man. Lord willing, this is edifying. On to the next. Shalom.